Ready to go?
Okay, I'll hit live.
Here we
Go.
go. Oh, good evening, friends and neighbors. It is Monday, the 8th of November in the year 2021. It is a work session agenda for the Stayton City Council. And welcome to it, however you are watching us tonight. And so, let's go to work. And the work is the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, funding and priority projects. And we're going to find out what some of those are, and we're going to go to city staff to tell us about it. So, Susanna, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. So I'm going to start the presentation this evening, and then Alyssa and Lance are here to add in as we go along. But so this is about the ARPA funds, and our talking points for this evening is we're going to go over the grant real quick, and we're going to go over the guidelines that we're using for the list of priorities that we're going to propose. And then we got the one project we're going to be talking about, and then what our plans are going forward for looking at the grant. So the ARPA funds, we were awarded $1.8 million. We got our first check in August of 21 for the $920,000. We're going to get the second check sometime in the fiscal year of 23. We weren't clear if it's going to be the exact same month but it's going to be in that ballpark. So that second check will come then. And then we need to spend all of the funds within the fiscal year of 2024. Excuse me. Sorry. Sorry about that. Cleared my throat. So that's the grant in a whole. And so out of all the priorities and the requirements allotted for spending the grant funds, the ones that contribute to us specifically that we need to focus on is that we're allowed to spend money on our investments in water, sewer, and broadband. It's kind of put together on there, but our focus is on our water and sewer, because those are the infrastructures that one of the things this grant is allotted to for expending approval to the grants allow us to spend the funds on, excuse me. So since those are the ones that are going to benefit the city, we're staying focused on the water and sewer projects at the moment. So the staff met, the management team met and kind of made a list with those parameters of what's approvable, allowable for expenditures for the grant, and came up with this list of projects. And this was just this was a brainstorming session using those parameters and just kind of making a list of some things that we knew that were necessities that needed to be addressed. And you can see that they're in water and one for street, but most of them are water and sewer. Your greens are your sewer and your blues are your water. And then the red, orange is the street fund. So those are the ones that are kind of there in the back. But if you go to the next slide, the one that we're going to focus on is the sand beds. We've had many conversations over the last year of the needs for the sand bed. It's about $740,000 to replace that sand bed. And for tonight's focus, we really want to focus on just having that ready to go for council meeting next week to approve the spending of the sand beds. And the reason why the sand bed is, one is because I just said, and then the other one is the fact that our fund, when you're looking at our 5-year projections, you knew our water fund was already in the red and had issues. So having this funds to take care of that sand bed will take some pressure off of the water fund, which would be very important. We also can't use SDC funds for this project, and we already have a loan in the water fund, so to take on any more loans would not be feasible at this point. So this is really the best option, using these grant funds to help the water fund and also get that sand bed before it's doing its job. Any questions so far?
we going to go over the other different projects as well?
At this point this evening, we didn't plan to go over them because we just want to let you know kind of what we're looking at, because the only thing that we're going to bring to council next week is to approve the sand beds, because the other funds, at this point, we want to see what other options could come up. There are some other infrastructure grants out there that could help. And we want some time to really look at the other funds, sewer and stuff, and see which ones with the projections would be most wise to spend the money, so we can put those funds back in, out of the red as much as possible and make them more in the green. So that's why we're really only focusing on that one this evening. But we can talk about any of those ones
Okay.
if you want to.
What would you like to talk about? Ask away.
Okay. So I'm happy to see that we can use it on our sewer system, because that's been when we talk about some of our older roads, a lot of the times when we say, well, it's not just the road that needs to be replaced, it's also the utilities underneath, the sewer lines and whatnot. Infrastructure underneath. Obviously, we have a shorter timeline to use these funds. And so I just wanted to, I don't know, if you could just kind of give us some details on these two projects and what's going on with them.
I'll go through, how about, no, that's all right. I don't need a picture. We'll just start at the top. Water treatment plant, I believe Jordan, and I believe Paige, and I believe, I'm sorry, Counselor,
It's fine. It's fine.
and David, you guys were all elected, and we brought forward, Andy Parks and myself, we brought forward the state of the water department at that point. I think you guys had just taken office. And we told you how bad the situation was with the water treatment plant and the sand beds. We did manage to scrape up the money to do sand filter bed 1. It was $579,000 to do that. That was 2 years ago. We were actually supposed to do a master plan project with those funds up on Shaft Road, but we took those funds because the sand filter bed number 1, we had 12 inches of sand in it. And if you look at the Oregon Health Authority, the minimum amount of sand that you're supposed to have before you replenish the sand is 20 inches. Well, we were considerably less than that. We were still producing good water out of it, but we needed to replenish it. So we did. We found the money. We did sand filter bed number 1. At the time, I had all 3 of the sand filter beds surveyed. Sand filter bed number 2 probably needed to have it done as well. Right now, we're sitting at about 18 inches of sand there. So that is next on the docket. And as Susanna had said, our water fund is not in a very great state. Finding money to do this would have been very, very difficult. I'm not sure how we would have done it. You guys knew that 3 years ago when we brought those options to you, and they've just kind of sat there for 3 years.
Yeah.
This is really coming at an opportune time. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's a silver lining. I mean, it came because of COVID, which is drastic, and we don't want it, but it's a silver lining, I guess, and we've got to take advantage of it. So that, I have, like I said, it was $590,000 for sand filter bed number 2 years ago. I increased it by 25% because the low bid was 590, the high bid was 690. So I added 25% to the low bid, $742,000. May come in at less than that, but that will allow us to get that done. Mayor.
Quick thought on that. There's just no chance that that cost could be down under 6.
I'm not saying no, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm saying 2 years ago.
Well, that was an action.
Are we back?
Okay, can you guys, we may not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you guys. I think the last thing that we heard was from the mayor, or no, from Lance, when he was saying 25% was added to the lowest after the mayor had asked a question.
Okay, let me get that back up. I have no idea what happened. That was exciting. Okay. Let's continue.
Are we good? Okay,
We
so
are
the mayor was
good to go
asking,
again.
is there any way that the price could be at or below 600,000, much like 2 years ago? And I said there's a chance, but not a very good one. You know, costs have gone up considerably in the last 2 years. I think the CPI last year was 5%. I think it's probably going to get close to that this year, at least. So we're talking at least 10, 15%. So that's what we're looking at. I added 25% on to be safe. Chances are it's going to come in under 742,000, but you always want to be over. I'd rather be over by 20,000 than have to come back and tell you folks that we underbid the project. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the water treatment plant, and it is in dire need of a sand replacement. Whether we do it with the ARPA funds or we go try to get a loan, it's got to get done. Project number 2 and 3 really are the sanitary sewer on Ida Street. Those are 2 projects that really go hand in hand. In fact, I signed a contract today to get those designed. And what that does is that it's a master plan project. Unfortunately, the amount of effluent that goes into those 2 pipes, or inflow that goes into those 2 pipes, isn't the increasing of the size to a 30-inch pipe is not due to new growth. It's due to existing sewer. So I cannot use but maybe 10% of the SDC funds to build that project. So I have in the 5-year plan to do phases 1 and 2, one this year and one next year. I'm trying to plan those where we start in May for phase 1 and start constructing, and in July, when the next fiscal year rolls around, we just continue on with the construction, but we have another pool of money to draw from to build phase 2 out. But those lines need to be upsized. It's limiting growth. We cannot develop a lot of portions along Ida until this line is upsized. The NORPAC property on Ida Street, we couldn't allow someone to develop right now because we don't have the capacity in that sewer line. That's why it's there. And so going down to the 4th,
Actually, both of those sanitary sewer projects, same situation, right?
absolutely, that's exactly what that
It's
is.
upsizing.
We have to upsize the sewer from basically on Jetter's Way at the fire station, all the way up to Evergreen Street, and then north on Evergreen Street past the Salem ditch. That whole line needs to be upsized because right now, the model shows that we have sewer surcharging out of First Avenue with our existing flows.
Okay.
So it needs to be upsized. There's DEQ problems that we can have there, and anyway, it's limiting development.
Lance, how far does Ida come west from, say, First Avenue? Is it all the way?
I'm sorry.
How far west does the Ida Street project, how far west does that extend from First? Say,
The projects, it starts from the downstream side. So you're always starting to the downstream side. You always want to increase the side and start downstream. So we'll be starting at the fire station
oh, okay. Well,
and
then,
moving our way up, going east on Ida.
how far east does it
The
go?
first 2 phases, the end of the 2nd phase, which should conclude sometime in August, if we follow my 5-year capital improvement plan, will stop just east of the NORPAC property. There's a manhole sitting there. The address is 1207 Ida Street, if you ever want to drive down and look at it, but there's a manhole sitting right out front. We're going to build up to that manhole in these first 2 phases. That way, if someone comes in and wants to develop that property there, we have the capacity. We've got 70 lots that they can build there or whatever else they want.
Okay.
We have the capacity to provide that. Right now, everything east of there, we do not. Right now, we don't have the capacity to allow that to develop. But once that's done in August, then we would allow that property to develop.
Okay. And then the second phase comes further west to.
No, that is the second phase. That's two phases there. The first phase goes up to Noble Street. I believe it's Noble Street. It goes from Jetter's Way up to Washington, and it goes up to Noble. And then the second phase goes from Noble to 1207. Any event, that's kind of what we're looking at there. It needs to be upsized the whole way up. If you'd like, you can look at our master plan. I believe the master plan is online. And you can go look at that. That is a priority 1 project. I think it's 1A, as a matter of fact. The first project that needs to be done in our entire system is this line. Any questions on that? Jordan, you look like you're
I have a
ready.
question. Are there any, I know you said this is a 1A, but are there any current sewer lines that do need to be updated because of growth that we could use more SDC funds for?
Yeah, I'm positive there are. Yeah.
So do we, or is one of the reasons that we're using these funds for this is because we can't use like the other streets we could use the SDC funds for, but we can't use as many on these projects?
We, and Susanna and Alyssa or Dan, any of you guys can pipe in at any time. We looked at the priorities only for the ARPA funds,
Okay.
the $920,000. We looked at citywide projects that we could use those on, and there's only infrastructure is basically what you can use it on. And we looked at the most pressing infrastructure needs that we currently have. And the number one thing that keeps getting kicked out is that sand filter bed. The sewer, we've lasted 15 years with it, the way it is, okay? The sand filter bed, I would have to shut that thing off this summer. We wouldn't be able to use it anymore.
Well, no, okay, so not,
So
I'm
that-
talking about the sewer line. So
Yeah.
the sand filter bed in my mind is the top priority, that's a given. But
Okay.
with the other projects, I'm just asking, like the sewer line projects, those, are you saying these dollars are better spent on these projects because you can only use, up to 10% or so on that project from the SDC fund, whereas there may be some other sewer lines that we could
Yeah,
pull more of those funds to fix in the future type of thing?
I will be completely honest with you. We only looked at the highest priorities. I didn't look at any other projects for SDC funds. We just looked at the highest priority of projects that need to get done in the city.
Okay.
I understand that there are lines, and basically the SDC projects that I see are like on Gardner Street, there's a lift station there. That needs to be removed at some point. That needs to just go all gravity line. We started that a couple of years ago when Hayden Homes did their line. And so that's an SDC project. But we didn't put that on here because it's not a high priority. We just looked at the highest priority projects for these funds.
This is Counselor Hook. I wanted to just say that I agree with Counselor Ort, and I saw Counselor Patty shaking his head or nodding his head as well. There's no doubt in my mind that the sand filter beds are definitely something that has to be taken care of. With that aside, knowing that, it seems like we're all in agreement that that's really important, I wanted to make sure that I just see a lot of infrastructure like actual like roads and things like that only in this presentation so far. Maybe I'll see more, but part of these funds are also able to be used for responding to the public health emergency and negative economic impacts to our community. I spoke with business owners probably at least 6 months ago now in a meeting, and they were really hoping that we could also help out with some community business grants. I know that I've gotten a lot of messages about like a homelessness issue. We talked about it in council. So maybe some homelessness assistance that also qualifies, I believe. Utility, rent, and mortgage assistance for people that are behind on their bills. Just things like that too that also help our individual community members would be really good for us to talk about, I think, as a yes and. Not that we can't still put money towards some of these other things that are on the list, but this might be a great opportunity to at least give a little bit of assistance out to people. There's a lot of funds that came in. We got way more than like Almsville and Turner, much less than Kaiser, but we did get a lot of money. And so I'd love for us to be able to talk about that, hopefully, on how we can hit more buckets besides just infrastructure specific to like roads and sewer and things like that.
Mayor Porter, Councilor Hook, I just wanted to respond to that this is definitely not an inclusive list and just a starting one that came from staff. And we did look at a lot of those other categories. So it's good to hear your input and the council's input on, it gives us, I think, more to look at. The plan was come forward, let's talk about the filter beds, here's some other ideas, but also that this is not the last conversation. This is just the preliminary one. And we'll be having more of these work sessions to dive deeper into these different ones. I took down some notes. I think that we can go back and kind of dig into some of the things that you had brought up and that Councilor Orton has brought up.
Another thing that I know that I just spoke to some people from Kaiser, which is why I'm using them as an example. They are also doing something, and I don't have all the details, with childcare, because it's really hard to find childcare right now, and people need childcare in order to work, and businesses have to have employees. And anyway, something that has come down recently is that they're now mandating that you have to have like overhead sprinklers inside your childcare facility, which is kind of a new thing. So it would be cool if maybe you guys could see what maybe Kaiser or some other cities are doing with that type of a thing as we talk about this. So we don't have childcare facilities closing down in Stayton because they can't afford to put a whole sprinkler system in. That's, again, just, you said they were taking notes, so I thought I'd put that out there, that might be something that we could look at. Again, these could just be smaller pools of money that we could set aside for these different subjects, while still putting a large amount towards these other things on your guys' list that are also important.
So if we're talking about stuff like that along those same lines, is there a way that we could use money for landlord assistance? Because there's a lot of landlords that are really struggling right now with people who are unfortunately taking advantage of the fact that they don't have to pay rent. There are lots of people that need that, but there are lots of people that are not paying their bills. I've heard several stories, and I've heard from lots of landlords that are just devastated and have no idea what they're going to do and trapped in the situation. So if we're going to talk about that, then I'd like that to be a consideration as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, Councilor Orr, just so you know. I'm on board with that for sure. Because if people have to sell their houses that they're renting, then we don't have rentals for people, and not everyone can buy a home, and I think thank you for bringing that up.
I would really, I'm open to listening to ideas, but I think that the things that are on this list and the things that are infrastructure related really help out the entire community as a whole. And there are people that have been struggling as a whole, but if we focus the money, or as much of it as we can, on these projects that all of the community can utilize, that's probably where I would like to see most of our money go.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so a lot of really good ideas here that I really, I'm not necessarily opposed to any of these. I think I'd like to hear from staff kind of what they would look like first before committing to anything specifically, obviously, and I imagine you all too feel that way. Couple things. First off, Councilor Hook, if you could provide any more specificity as far as the need for business grants that you've seen in the community. Now, this is something that I'm aware that, you know, the business community could always probably use some help. I'm just curious if you've heard any specific needs so that we could better direct staff to produce some kind of program for us to view the next time we discuss this. And then I had one other thing that I wanted to discuss with staff.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Patty. This is Councilor Hook. I haven't spoken directly with the business owners in a few months now. It would maybe be a great thing to have the city reach out to maybe Carmel Wielenberg, the Chamber of Commerce director, to see what kind of things she's been hearing, because I know that she keeps really a close eye on how businesses are doing. But for example, Roxy's barbershop downtown closed down because of COVID. And I know that it was a few months ago that I spoke to one of the restaurant owners, but you know, they hadn't received personally as an owner a paycheck in over a year for themselves. So they are struggling, and I can't imagine that they have recouped that money even for their own personal paycheck. I mean, this particular business owner has the dual income, right, with a partner, and so they're able to make it. But these are some of the sacrifices that have had to be made, and I'm sure that this is just one of many stories that are like that. And so I think you know, it's important, and I can't imagine that anyone would disagree with this. It's important that we have businesses stay open, because they also, you know, pay services to the city and keep us thriving and keeping people wanting to come and live here.
Absolutely. I would agree. Thank you. I appreciate the offered guidance and the engagement that you had with the business community. Thank you. One other idea I had heard while we were kind of brainstorming here, the thing that I think that would be important that we can actually stay in our lane and help citizens with is increased water bill forgiveness throughout this situation. I feel like that's a good way that we can answer this need in the community. And I guess the only other thing that I would offer to this discussion, I think I agree with the way staff has prioritized these projects. I think that the water bed, the sand filter bed, has been critical since we first heard about it, and it still is. Looking forward to hearing a little bit more about the sanitary sewer projects that Lance sort of detailed there. I would like to see a map and all that. And I realize we're going to be having this conversation in the future with a little bit more detail. I'd like to see that, and hoping that the roundabout doesn't fall off this list. I think that there's a need for that just for our transportation system in Stayton. So those are my thoughts. That's my feedback. Past a head nod and a smile. Thank you.
Okay, so I have all those written down, and just for knowledge, anyone that is behind, the city keeps getting updated on new funds that are out there, and we email our customers and give them that information right away. So all the other outside agencies that are helping with those utility services, we keep the community well in contact with that. So just so you know. Because we want to make sure that everyone gets the help they can get. So, did you have any other questions on the?
Not a question, but a comment about the roundabout that Councilor Patty brought up. So, I had an opportunity to speak with Representative Kate, who is our House District representative, and I was talking to her about the money that, and I don't remember the name, so if all of you remember it, but it's the money that the senators and the representatives got for their districts. So she got $2 million that she could spend within the districts, and we were kind of talking about those funds. And one of the things that we had talked about is for our city to have these projects and these things laid out, kind of what Lance and Dan have called shovel ready, projects and have them have these things available and ready to go, and not just the idea of, oh, we want a roundabout. Because if we go to them with these, when they have funds available, things can move quickly. So if we're trying to vie for that attention and we say, oh, we want this roundabout, and they say, well, how much is it going to cost? And we're like, I don't really know. It's we think it may be this much, blah, blah, blah. If somebody else comes to them with a project and said, hey, we have this project, this is what we want to do, it's easier for them to say yes. So I'm really interested in hearing how we can use these funds for this project, because I know this is a big thing, and when we can partner with Marion County and we can maybe get some other funds for when this is available, if we can get this projects ready to go. And I know we've talked about this several times, but I just want to reiterate that was something that was brought up. If we have these things available and ready, they're more apt to say yes and give us funds when they're available.
Do you want me to address that?
Yeah, if you would, Lance.
Yeah, so I have been working with a consultant, probably 4 or 5 consultants on this roundabout for probably almost a year now. We should probably have design plans ready by May. So we're well ahead of that. That's when we brought before council that contract and our proposal to get this going and get it shovel ready, just so when we get this transportation fund, and it just passed this week, or last Friday, we're also looking at those dollars. That is why we went forward and had that design. So we're hoping that when we have construction plans, those shovel-ready construction plans done in May, that we'll be able to apply for some federal dollars, county dollars, wherever dollars we can to get that thing built.
That's awesome, thank you.
Well, not only the design, but we'll have the numbers, right? I mean, estimates, but numbers.
That is correct.
Okay.
It's entire construction specs,
There we go. That's
plans, everything.
Lance and council, would a chance of getting some of that money for these sewer projects? I mean, what, $4.5 million? Is that what I saw there, total?
Yeah, that's the master plan project. We're going to know more. That seems kind of high to me.
Well,
That seems like a consultant throwing 25, 30% of contingency at it. So it seems kind of high to me. But again, we're going to go, regardless if we use these dollars or whatever, I've already put in the 5-year capital improvement plan projects for the next 5 years to build that.
okay.
We're only going to do pieces at a time. But we'll know more in May when I bid it out for the contractor to build. So I think it's a little high. We'll find out more when we get closer to May.
Well, it just, again, just seems to me that that much money it doesn't leave us any money to do anything else with ever. Well, not ever, but for a long stretch. If we keep, there's no room, for me, it comes down to there's no room for a lot of these social programs, however worthy they are. And I would absolutely agree. One that neither of our counselors threw in is more help at home for seniors. Now, that would be aware, a lot of younger people wouldn't see that as very necessary, but it's going to become more necessary as we try to keep grandma at home rather than put her in some kind of care facility. So just another one of those, that whole tier of social programs, all of them worthy. And how do we fund some of those, or any of those, or all of them? So enough for me.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
this
Oh,
is Councilor
yes,
Hook.
yes.
I wanted to also thank you for bringing that up too. And I feel like maybe throwing out there the idea of local veteran help as well. What I want to have clarified is, hopefully by city staff, is that there are 2 funding sources that we're talking about. that are coming in soon. I think sometimes we might get them confused because there's the infrastructure bill that we were just, told just passed. And so keeping that in mind, that is like different than American Rescue Plan Act funds. And so the American Rescue Plan Act really is supposed to also help with these social issues that were caused by COVID-19. And so to ignore those, I feel like might not be maybe not the best idea. I think we can do a yes and with these funds and maybe talk more about what those infrastructure funds look like or might look like for us in opportunity and see if we can really focus in on doing like the roundabout with something like those funds versus ARPA funds.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you much.
So with, fortunately, we don't have to have these funds spent until 2024. And when this grant was originally given to us, those were the criterias: infrastructure, broadband. So those are the projects on the top of our list. The other ones that have been added in came in later, and none of us have had time to dig into those and really start breaking down to what we can do. So that's why the last slide says we're going to continue to monitor the ARPA funds, because I'm seeing the same pattern as it did with the CARES Act money. They kept changing the rules. As we went through what we could spend the money on, it kept changing. So this will give us time to look at those social programs, look at the other options in the grant, continue to compare it against the funds that are in the red or these infrastructure projects that will take the pressure off of those funds, and then be able to have a deeper list when we come back to start spending the next amount of money. We'll have a new list when we come back, because at this point, we're going to have to do another work session again when we have a new outline again. So, because tonight's focus was really just to give you the information about it, tell you some of the things that we knew that were the big infrastructure projects, and then we'll have more time to find other projects later.
Anything else? Lance?
Real quick, Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty.
Oh, Councilor.
Susanna, did I hear you correctly in that we will be seeing the sand filter bed decision come before us next week, though?
Yes, that will be on next week's council meeting, is to approve spending the ARPA funds on the sand bed.
Thank you.
Other questions or thoughts? Are we done?
That's all city staff has, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. Let's go home then. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.
Ben, good evening.
You too.